Hey everyone, I'm Rick Beato. On today's video, I'd like to talk about how to put together your pedal board. Now, with things like the Axe-Fx and the Kemper profiling amps, one of the things that you still need to know how to do is how to chain effects pedals together, especially with the Axe-Fx, because to create a patch from scratch, you actually need to order your effects pedals. You have to choose the amplifiers, you got to choose the cabinets, but you have to put your effects pedal in a particular order. Now, there are not any hard and fast rules really that you have to follow, but there are general guidelines that you should follow. When I bought my first pedal, which was this MXR flanger in 1978 that I still have and still works and sounds amazing, that's the only thing I had to worry about because that's the only thing I could afford. And I soon bought a distortion pedal after and started on to where I have 100 some odd effects pedals or something like that. And there's been a real renaissance of effects pedals over the last probably 15 years or so. There's some really amazing boutique companies. There's a lot of pedals that have been recreated, and they've made them smaller so they can fit on pedal boards easier. You know, I have a fuzz face, for example, that's this big that actually only needs to be this big. I actually have both of the different fuzz pedals. But one of the things that I learned very early on was this: pitch, tone, modulation, time. PTMT. Okay, pitch, tone, modulation, time. That is generally what the order of your pedals should be. Okay, let's talk about why. If we're going to talk about pitch, if I'm using something like this is an old school digital whammy pedal. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. That's going to be your first effect in your signal chain after your tuner. I'm not even counting the tuner. The tuner is going to go first. But the digital whammy, for example, needs a very clean tone. You don't want to put a distorted tone into it because it's not going to be able to reliably track the pitch of the guitar. Okay, so you want to put your pitch altering, your pitch shifter, whatever it may be, first. Now, pitch and modulation can be similar, but I'm going to explain what the difference is. Tone comes next. Distortion, overdrive pedals, EQs. Anything that alters the tone, like a wah-wah, will come next. They can be in any order, really, but generally, I like to put wah-wahs early on, for example, because I want as much of the tone available to sweep with my wah-wah as possible. Things like modulation, like chorus or flanger. I'm going to turn it on. You're going to hear that regeneration, which I have all the way up here, and it's giving you that sound. I'm playing through a Marshall Plexi. Check it out. Or if you're doing something like Peter Frampton using a Phase 90. So after your tone comes your modulation. That will be followed by time. Now, time is usually delays first and then reverbs second. You can also have a delay after your reverb if you'd like, but typically you want your delay followed by your reverb. And then the last thing to put on there is if you have something that is a looping pedal. You want to take your entire sound and put a looper on it. Pedals like loopers will generally come last because you want to take your existing tone and loop that entire sound before you go into the amplifier. You can put things into your effects loops. Many time effects, for example, people will put through their effects loop on their amp. Now, in the old days, effects loops didn't really start happening until the 80s. Amplifiers didn't come with effects loops. I mean, you could have them customized back then, but typically, if you're Jimi Hendrix, Eddie Van Halen, anybody that used pedals early on, used the pedals and then into the amplifier. You can see Jimi Hendrix's effects sitting on the floor. People didn't have pedal boards. They just put them down on the floor, plugged them in, and went into their amplifier. But they generally followed these exact rules. Here's a picture of Jimi Hendrix's pedals. You notice he goes from his Strat into his cable and then into his Vox wah pedal, his Dallas Arbiter fuzz face, his Univibe with expression pedal, and then into his Marshall 100 watt super lead plexi. So he starts with his wah-wah pedal because you want to take your full tone unaffected so that you have the full range of it. So he goes into his wah, then he goes into his fuzz, okay, so he can wah the fuzz sound. Then he comes out of the fuzz and he goes into his modulation effect, his Univibe. That's taking that distorted sound and giving it its modulation. And then right into his amp. Now this is a very simple pedal setup, and you don't really need to have that complex of a pedal setup. If you look at this next Jimi Hendrix picture, you'll see that he's going into his Vox Wah, coming out of that, going into his Octavia pedal, Octavia, and then into his fuzz face, then into his Univibe, and then into his Marshall. And here's how it sounds. Okay, next, I'm going to actually build the pedal board, but I'm going to need Rhett's help because Rhett builds pedal boards all the time. So I bought all the parts. I've already got the pedals. I got the board. I'm going to call Rhett, have him come over and help me put it together. So let me give him a call here. Yo, what are you doing? Can you come over and help me build this pedal board now? All right, I'll see you in a few. Goodbye. We're not going swimming. We're making a video. Don't come down, please. What do you got to tell me?
I need a marker.
Need a marker?
Bye.
That's it?
All right, see ya.
All right, thanks, Layla.
All right, so the first thing I always like to do when I'm setting up a new pedal train is mount the power supply. So Voodoo Labs supplies the brackets to mount directly to.
Actually, I had to buy the brackets separately.
Oh, really?
It was $10.
Oh, I didn't know. I like to mount the power supply in the middle,
Okay.
right, as opposed to left or right, because this way the power supply is sort of equidistant to every pedal on the board.
Makes sense.
So what we're going to do is just start off by drilling. We're going to just eyeball it here. All right, so that's it. We are mounted nice and flush there. And you can see through the top, you got a little bit of space that you can use to route cables and everything. The nice thing I like about the new pedal trains, this is the Novo 24, so this is one of the new designs. The front has the opening all the way across.
And why is that good?
Because with the old pedal trains, they just had two holes mounted
Oh,
here.
that's right.
And so you
Yeah.
had to put
it right there.
and it was really only designed to fit a pedal power 2 plus. With this design, you can use a multitude of different power supplies.
I know that my brother has his pedal train or his Voodoo Labs there, and he has a Strymon here on top.
And if you wanted to, like if you needed to upgrade and add another power supply, you could just move this one over and put another one.
Got it.
Right on. Now we're going to throw the Velcro on the board, loop side down. I always trim off the end here because you can see from the factory it's a pretty rough cut. So
got it.
I like to have them nice and straight.
Hopefully these are good sharp scissors.
Yeah,
working okay?
Solid.
Great.
So then, the way we like to do this is just peel off a couple of inches of.
So you're going to line each row. So I have a lot of pedals that I've collected over the last, since the 70s, honestly.
What are you thinking right off the top of the bat?
Well, I want a fuzz pedal on there. I know I definitely want a fuzz pedal. Now, I have fuzz pedals like this old fuzz face, and I have this new fuzz face. And I don't think that they're exactly the same, but this one takes up a lot less space, even though I've actually never used it. So I want to try this out. So this definitely is going to go on the board. I also have some custom fuzzes like this that are made from a friend of mine made this. I'm going to want to bring on some type of overdrive pedal. Maybe this is going to go on there, or I have another tube screamer, this one that's been modded like an original one. I'll probably put this one on here. Okay. I'm going to want to get some type of tuner.
Oh, right here. Nice thing about the Polytune, the full-size Polytune like this one, is it has an extra 9-volt out. So it takes a 9-volt slot on the Voodoo Labs, but you can power another pedal with it, so you still have 8 slots of power.
Great. So I've got the Polytune, that I got the fuzz. So I'm not taking up very much room here with these three. I'm going to want to get some type of overdrive pedal, another overdrive pedal, just for variety. So I'm probably going to go with something, let's say, maybe like the Red Dirt pedal by Keeley, which is a cool pedal. If I need a compressor, I'm going to grab a compressor. This is a Keeley compressor here. I've got another one, a bigger one here, but this one I'm going to use because it's just a smaller version of that. I also have my SL drive, which is a great distortion pedal as well, this exotic drive. As far as delays, I'm going to probably, let me just grab one delay for now. I'm going to grab this Mag Echo. This is a Keeley one as well. I want my Ditto pedal for looping. This is TC Electronics. Let's say I like my Hog pedal because I like to do, I like the hold feature on it where it'll hold chords and I can solo over it. So I'm going to take that. And then, whoops. Dropped one of them, and then I'm going to take my Cathedral reverb pedal for a reverb. I'll take that, and maybe I'll take this Boss old school reverb RV5. I think this will be a good start anyways. So now we have all the pedals affixed to the board here. They're all good and tight, and we need to figure out how to power them. Rhett?
Okay, so your Voodoo Labs comes with all of these different cables. Most of them are for your modern 9-volt center negative power supply. Some of the older pedals, like some older Electro Harmonics pedals,
Or pedals like this. This is an older one.
Electro Harmonics.
They have really specific power supplies that you don't want to mess with.
Well, so the thing you have to be careful with these kind of pedals, if you're new to this, even just because the cable might actually fit into the plug doesn't mean it's safe to use. So for example, a lot of these older Electro Harmonics pedals, these would fit into, but some of them were center positive pins instead of center negative pins, meaning the polarity is reversed on them. And so if you're not careful, you can damage your pedals.
You can fry them. I've had it happen before.
Right.
Usually with bands that were working here that plugged in the pedals incorrectly.
Didn't know what they were doing. So you just need to be careful of that. It's really easy. If you don't know, look it up online, Google it. What's cool about the modern power supplies now, Voodoo Labs and Strymon and One Spot all come with different cables for different applications. So we're just going to use the standard 9-volt ones because there's no special need power supplies on this.
That was one of the things that I decided when we were picking out these pedals is I didn't take anything that had its own cable. For example, my MXR flanger that I like to use, it's a very noisy pedal, but it has an incredible sound, but I don't want to be dealing with that. If I'm going to use that, I'm going to use it off to the side or just put it on for when I need it.
Yeah. I think now we can go ahead and start running power cabling. One thing to be really careful of when you're running power, your signal cables and your power cables should never run parallel to each other. If that happens, you essentially create an antenna, and that's where you start getting into problems like picking up radio frequencies through your amp. If your power cables and signal cables ever do need to cross, you should always cross them at a perpendicular.
Right angles.
Yeah, at a right angle, so it cancels out any of that interference. So the nice thing about the pedal train boards is you can run all of your power cables underneath the board and your signal cables on top, so they never really cross, but just so you know. So these just plug in right here to the front side of the power supply. You've got 8 outlets. It doesn't matter with these cables which side you use. They're both the same side and they're non-directional. Interesting note about the Voodoo Labs Pedal Power 2 Plus is these 2 outlets here have potentiometers on them, and they're sag control, so you can basically emulate like a dying 9-volt battery in a fuzz or something like that. So we could reserve those two for your fuzz pedal, and then the rest of them are just standard 100 milliamp 9-volt. So there's kind of two ways to do this. You could start at the pedals and then run back to the power supply, or vice versa.
How do you like to do this?
I usually start at the power supply and go to the pedals. One thing that I really like to do to keep, because my boards travel a lot and they get toured and gigged, so I use little 1-inch by 1-inch anchor points that are just adhesive backed plastic zip tie anchors, and I line the bottom of the board with zip tie anchors so I can basically lock all the cables down.
Got it.
But
We don't need to do that.
yeah,
Though.
since this board's just going to live here at the house, it can be, so hold the top of that board for
Got it. Actually had to switch things around a bit because we needed to have things flow this way and then this way again. Otherwise your in and outs will cross over each time, which you don't want to have happen. So we're going to finish patching these.
So there you go. That should work.
That's all for now. Please subscribe here to my Everything Music YouTube channel, and don't forget to subscribe to Rhett's channel. I'll put the link in the description. Thanks for watching. Next video, we're going to actually play through the board.